Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Jade Hindman in for Maya Trabolsi. Former San Diego Mayor Bob Filner has died. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the groping and harassment scandal that brought him down left a mark on city politics.
I,
please state your name.
Bob Filner,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear.
In 2012, Filner became the first Democrat elected to the San Diego mayor's office in 24 years. But he resigned less than 9 months into his term after more than a dozen women accused him of unwanted touching and verbal sexual harassment. He later pleaded guilty to battery and false imprisonment. The first accuser to come forward was Irene McCormack, who worked as Filner's communications director.
He was a detriment to the city of San Diego and to the people who work there. And I learned that community is everything. When you can gather people together to right a wrong, it can work.
McCormack says she believes justice was served and that Filner was held accountable for his actions. Filner had a long political career, serving on the San Diego City Council and 20 years in Congress.
And then he came to San Diego, and if it hadn't been for the lawsuit I filed with my attorney, Gloria Allred, and then all the people that came to support me in what I was doing, it would have just continued for years. And I'm not kidding, 3 months later, he resigned.
In the wake of the scandal, city voters passed a ballot measure creating a process for removing elected officials who are convicted of crimes or fail to perform official duties. Filner's ex-fiancée told KPBS he had been dealing with a variety of health issues and that his last residence was an assisted living home in Orange County. He died April 20th at the age of 82. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Well, tonight we're dropping down into the mid-50s once again, still sticking with some of the partly cloudy skies, and especially evenings and in the early morning. We're going to be dealing with those marine layer low clouds really most of the week. We'll break down what else to expect for the week ahead and even an early look at the weekend coming up.
Anna, thanks. So this week marks the end of the first 100 days of President Donald Trump's second term. And according to the most recent CNN poll, Trump has the lowest approval rating of any president in their first 100 days, going back to at least Eisenhower. Despite that, the Trump administration is working to highlight what they consider to be his biggest accomplishments so far. Today, border czar Tom Homan is defending some of the administration's recent raids and deportations. Our Washington correspondent Julia Benbrook reports from the White House.
Today's messaging here at the White House focuses in on President Donald Trump's hardline stance on immigration, as the administration looks to tout what it believes are its biggest accomplishments on border security. They lined the North Lawn with photos of people they say are undocumented immigrants who have been arrested. This comes after several days of raids and deportations, including what U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement described as a massive multi-agency immigration enforcement crackdown in Florida that led to the arrest of nearly 800 people over 4 days. In Colorado, more than 100 immigrants allegedly in the country illegally were detained in Colorado Springs after an overnight raid at what authorities described as an underground nightclub in a strip mall. Separately, border czar Tom Homan is defending the administration's recent deportations of 3 children who are U.S. citizens.
If you choose to have a U.S. citizen child, knowing you're in this country legally, you put yourself in that position. You put your family in that position. What we did is remove children with their mothers who requested the children depart with them. This was a parental decision, parenting 101. The mothers made that choice.
Advocates for the women say they were not given a choice and both wanted their children to remain in the U.S. A recent CNN survey shows that the majority of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of immigration so far. Trump has been working at a rapid pace since the day he was sworn in, and tomorrow is expected to give a wide-ranging speech about the first few months of his second term. Reporting at the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
President Trump signed a flurry of executive orders to start his second term. Some resulted in cuts to federal funding for several local projects, and that includes a project to build a long-awaited park in Barrio Logan. The Environmental Health Coalition told our media partner KGTV it received a $20 million grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, but that funding was frozen within the first few weeks of President Trump's return to the Oval Office.
A lot of, unfortunately, if this funding is taken away from us, this park would be defunded. We have to fight for things like a park. We have to fight for things like clean air. So it's been very unfortunate, and it's been, very difficult last few months.
The Environmental Health Coalition says they've been forced to front the cost of the projects and even make staff cuts to stay afloat. The 3.2-acre park would be one of the largest in the area. Project 2025 calls the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration a key driver of the, quote, climate change alarm industry, end quote. While the Trump administration hasn't quite made good on plans to break up the agency known as NOAA, KPBS' Amita Sharma reports it may dramatically downsize it.
The Trump administration has cut 1,000 NOAA workers and floated the idea of shuttering its Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research. Paul Hepner, formerly with Friends of NOAA, says that would be a colossal blow to climate change study. Researchers monitor fisheries, map and track coastal flooding and sea level rise. Hepner says crucial weather prediction tools would be lost too.
70% of the planet is covered by ocean, 30% by landmass. You have to understand the ocean. Think about what we call those atmospheric rivers. You've heard about those, the Pineapple Express. Okay, you get these subtropical jets that come out of Hawaii. I mean, that is your Sierra Nevada snowpack. Okay, that is your drinking water for the next summer, not only for California, but also for adjacent states.
Climate scientist Ralph Keeling says the shutdown of NOAA's research division would be devastating to San Diego's Scripps Institution of Oceanography. The two entities partner in ocean observations important to, quote, all aspects of society.
Where they're tracking currents offshore using a high-tech radar system, and those measurements are relevant for studying the dispersal of pollution, for search and rescue, for tracking ocean heat waves that affect fisheries. I mean, these are $100 million industries, tourism that depends on this.
Keeling says the study is relevant to understanding how bad climate change will get and whether to retreat or fortify. He adds, without it, the U.S. is turning off the headlights and flying blind. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Public Matters is a partnership with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/publicmatters. And there's a new place to keep track of pollution in the South Bay. San Diego County has launched a new online dashboard. The tool collects information from several websites to keep people updated on current beach conditions and odor complaints. The county is working with UC San Diego on the project. You can find a link to the new dashboard at countynewscenter.com. And new projects in Imperial Beach and South San Diego aim to protect bicyclists and pedestrians from accidents with drivers. iNewsSource intern Teal Davis explains.
A bikeway connection from the San Ysidro Port of Entry to the Bayshore Bikeway, which runs along the Silver Strand, is nearing completion. Construction for the project began in 2023, and crews have been adding curb extensions at intersections and speed bumps in the area to encourage drivers to slow down. The connection roadways will also receive bend-outs, a road feature that brings cyclists away from the road and closer to sidewalks at intersections.
That is the goal of the city, is to make our streets safe and family-friendly.
There were 46 accidents involving cyclists in Imperial Beach from 2015 to 2022, according to data from the San Diego Association of Governments. With the updated infrastructure, SANDAG, which is in charge of regional transportation projects, anticipates seeing an increase in ridership.
That is the point of, when we're designing these, the bicycle infrastructure is enticing more people to feel safer riding their bikes and being on the road.
The new 6.7-mile bikeway connection is estimated to cost $31 million. The final construction for the project is currently underway, with crews expected to complete the project this summer. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource intern Teal Davis.
iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. For more on this story, you can go to inewssource.org. The Catholic Church is in a period of mourning following the death of Pope Francis. The pontiff, who died Easter Monday, was 88 years old, and the election for a successor known as the Conclave is scheduled to take place next Wednesday, May 7th. Christopher Lamb reports on how it's done.
When it comes to choosing a new pope, the process is a mix of ancient tradition, religious ritual, and politics. Only a small select group has a say in the decision, with votes taking place behind closed doors in the Sistine Chapel. Let's take a look at how it works. Technically, any Roman Catholic male can be elected the leader of millions of Catholics around the world. But the next pope will come from among the cardinals. Since the 14th century, every pope has previously been a cardinal. The task of electing a pope falls to the College of Cardinals. They are chosen by the popes and wear distinctive red robes meant to symbolize a willingness to shed their blood for the Christian faith. They must be younger than 80 years old to participate in the vote. The election, known as a conclave, usually happens 15 to 20 days after the papal office becomes vacant, and all eligible candidates must vote in person. Before they start voting, all the cardinals, including those over 80, gather for crucial meetings in Rome. It is here that the big questions facing the church are discussed and potential candidates start to emerge. The conclave begins with a special morning mass in St. Peter's Basilica. After this, the strictly guarded vote takes place in the Sistine Chapel. Once the conclave starts, cardinals aren't allowed to speak to anyone outside of the process, read media reports, receive messages, or discuss the details of the elections afterwards. If they break the conclave secrecy rules, they risk excommunication. Once the voting starts, they write a candidate's name on a ballot, and in order of seniority, they drop them into a chalice. Cardinals aren't allowed to vote for themselves. The results are recorded by 3 designated cardinals. To be elected pope, a candidate needs to gain 2/3 of the vote. If that doesn't happen, they vote again and again. In total, 4 rounds of voting can be held a day until they reach that threshold. If no man is elected after 4 days, the conclave breaks for prayer and discussion before trying again. The voting process takes place behind the scenes. So how does the public find out when a new pope has been chosen? The ballots are burned once in the morning and once in the evening. If there's no winner, a chemical is added to turn the smoke black, so the people waiting in St. Peter's Square know that a new pope has not yet been chosen. But when a pope has been elected, a different chemical is added to ensure smoke comes out white, signaling a new pontiff. And finally, the man chosen must accept the decision of the cardinals. A senior cardinal tells the world, "We have a pope," and introduces the new pontiff to the crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square. The new pope goes out onto the balcony to make his first remarks and give his blessing.
Christopher Lamb reporting there. The Diocese of San Diego says Catholic churches will hold a memorial mass for the Pope this Wednesday, April 30th. Each church is holding the memorial at a time that serves its community. Those interested in attending are asked to check with their parish. U.S. credit card debt is at an all-time high. Nearly half of Americans reported having credit card debt, according to a new survey by Bankrate. Some experts worry President Trump's tariffs could further burden American households. Jen Sullivan breaks down the numbers.
Nearly half of Americans who have a credit card have debt. Those numbers are based on a new survey by the financial site Bankrate. And among the people who have debt, more than 70% said they believe they'd be able to pay off their balance within 5 years.
It's definitely a problem at the household level.
Ted Rossman at Bankrate says debt has reached an all-time high. According to the latest report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, credit card debt in the U.S. has reached $1.21 trillion. That's 4% higher than a year ago. Rossman says that breaks down to about $6,600 per household.
If you make minimum payments at the average interest rate of about 20%, you're in debt for 18 years and you owe close to $10,000 in interest.
Many experts worry that higher prices due to President Donald Trump's tariffs could worsen debt for Americans. The White House is hoping it will encourage companies to bring back jobs to the U.S., but that will take time.
People are feeling squeezed between higher housing costs and medical care and food and childcare and all these things, and there's just not as much wiggle room.
If you do have a lot of credit card debt, Rossman says it's best to pay off as much as you can so you don't pay more in interest and penalties. You could also look into transferring your debt to a 0% interest credit card. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
And another way consumers are coping is by looking for alternatives to the high grocery prices at supermarkets. The U.S. Census Bureau says the recent spike in grocery prices was higher in San Diego than most U.S. cities. Staples like meat, poultry, and eggs rose 7%. Fruits and vegetables rose nearly 3%. Shoppers in Rancho Bernardo say prices at farmers markets are becoming more competitive with retail chains.
This used to be more expensive, now it's kind of equal. I've noticed it's pretty comparable, especially vegetables and like all the greens and berries. It will be the same if you buy from the franchise.
President Trump has scaled back some of his proposed tariffs. However, the situation is affecting consumer confidence. A poll released last week by the University of Michigan shows a 32% drop since January. For decades, owning a home has been part of the American dream. But as prices and mortgage rates remain high, it's a dream that many can't afford. Jen Sullivan looks at the cost to buy versus renting a home.
The cost of living continues to rise across the country. In March, the median existing home sale price climbed to over $400,000. That's nearly 3% higher than a year ago, according to the National Association of Realtors. And home sales have dipped as a result, with many buyers wondering if they can even afford a home.
Affordability continues to be the biggest barrier for Americans trying to achieve home ownership.
Alex Gailey is an analyst at the consumer finance company Bankrate. They recently found on average, renting a home is cheaper than paying a mortgage in all 50 of the largest U.S. metro areas.
We know home prices have skyrocketed in the last few years because we saw that big pandemic boom. And we also know mortgage rates have risen dramatically.
The median monthly mortgage payment in March was about $2,800, according to Redfin. Mortgages typically include property taxes and home insurance costs. Whereas the median rent was about $1,600, but rentals often tend to be smaller.
There's a lot of upfront costs that you don't have to deal with renting that can be financially beneficial for you, even if you are missing out on building equity through a home.
There is some good news. The further you live from a major city, the price gap between buying and renting a home narrows. And many experts predict home sale prices will come down in the next few years as more inventory comes onto the market. For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
The biggest thing to keep in mind really for your morning commute all week is the marine layer, low clouds and fog that we're going to be dealing with. Otherwise, for the week ahead, temperatures staying relatively consistent until we start to get towards the weekend. We see a little bit of a cooling trend, but just for some of us, and this is all ahead of some weekend rain. Let's go ahead and dive into exactly what to expect here, starting off with tonight's temperatures. We're in the upper 40s in Oceanside, mid-50s there in San Diego. A lot of us dealing with the partly cloudy skies, but not so much as we get a little bit farther inland and into some of our higher elevations, where we're in the 40s in Mount Laguna. Taking a look ahead to tomorrow. still sticking with some of those clouds by the coast, but otherwise sunny skies a little bit further inland, and then once again the clouds as we get towards our higher elevations, especially temperatures ranging between the 60s and the 70s. Then we get to the 80s for Borrego Springs and the upper 50s for Mount Laguna. Now, looking ahead to the weekend, a couple things going on. So further inland and especially into kind of our higher elevations here and then farther into the southwest, we have a little bit of a cooling trend. Some of us could see temperatures 10, 20 degrees below our historical averages. Not really closer to the coast, but where you guys come in for the weekend is the rain. Some of us are going to be seeing the rain coming all the way down to Southern California. I know we've seen some rain and even mountain snow into this Sierra recently, but we get in on the rain come this weekend. So get ready for it. I know maybe not the best for your weekend plans, but we need any kind of rain that we can get. So taking a look at your 5-day outlook here, we're not changing temperatures too much by the coast, just a degree or two day by day. All week and even into the weekend, we are dealing with some of the clouds, and of course those increase as we get ready for the rain into the weekend. Further inland, we do drop down from the mid 70s to the low 70s Thursday and Friday, and even dropping down by about 5 degrees to 65 is our high for Saturday. You'll notice all the clouds. We do have the rain coming in. Our mountain 5-day outlook, we're in the 50s. Not too much variation here from the upper 50s to the mid 50s, and then into our deserts we see upper 80s just until we get to the weekend, then we drop down to the low 80s. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Anna Azalian.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump further cracks down on immigration as he nears 100 days into his second term. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And you can get the latest local news from KPBS delivered right to your inbox. We've got a variety of newsletters, including daily headlines, KPBS Arts, streaming picks, and our North County focus. Go to kpbs.org and look for the newsletters section at the top of the screen. From there, you can sign up with your email address. Okay, so there's a building in National City that looks very much out of place in Southern California, but there's a reason why it was built to look exactly as it does, and Ken Kramer has the story and a little bit of history about San Diego.
When you see it, you think, well, this looks like nothing from San Diego.
I'm from Point Loma, and I just happened onto the street one day, and I'm like, wow, what is that?
It's a row house, several homes in one long building, the kind of thing you might find in some eastern cities like Philadelphia, not in the 900 block of A Avenue in National City.
And it was built in 1887, and it's got the highest rating you can get on the National Register of Historic Sites.
And to understand how it came to be built here in the first place, we need to know a little history. And to help us with that is a person who's lived in the row house for nearly 40 years and knows more about it than anybody, Lady Janice Martinelli.
This is what Brick Road, the building we're in now, looked like when it was first built.
There was nothing like it in San Diego County in the 1880s, appearing to be very East Coast. The whole place looks like it could have been picked up from the city of brotherly love and dropped here in National City. But no, it was built here, and Lady Janice, who is also the president of the National City Historical Society, has thoroughly researched how it happened.
Here's a picture of what it looked like in the old days.
In the 1880s, National City wanted, no, desperately needed a railroad to bring people and prosperity here. But the decision makers, the railroad officials, they lived in Philadelphia. National City needed a way to get their attention back there.
And this right here is our guy, Frank Kimball. They call him the little man with the big ideas. He was only 5'1".
Frank Kimball, along with his brothers, he had come from New Hampshire seeking better weather and economic opportunity. But again, the railroad was the key, and his big idea was to build this. A Philadelphia row house right here in San Diego County, an exact replica right down to the last flourish, with 12-inch thick walls and stained glass windows. It was, look, you Philadelphia Railroad executives, you'll feel right at home here.
So when Kimball actually got them to come out and look at National City, I think that helped, because they thought, oh, wow, look at this. This is beautiful. This is like Philadelphia.
The railroad came, and with it the railroad officials who did like and did live in the row house. It was said that for a time, so did Wyatt Earp.
There's a lot of information that I've read and researched that all points to that being true.
So you're going with that?
I'm going with that. This is an actual dairy bottle that we found under the building.
Janice Martinelli loves every brick and every trinket associated with this place. She operates a Victorian tea house here and says she would have so liked to have lived back in that time. It's why she calls herself Lady Janice, as ladies would have in that era. It's hard to picture her living anyplace else, really, than this National City row house, first built to entice those Philadelphia executives in 1887.
And here it stands today, and it's lovely.
So very interesting. If you want to see more of Ken Kramer's stories about San Diego, be sure to check out his half-hour show every Thursday night here at 8 p.m. on KPBS. And here's a look at what we're working for on tomorrow for KPBS's Newsroom. On NPR's Morning Edition, a small coffee roastery is wrestling with settling wholesale prices amid uncertainty surrounding tariffs on the countries that grow coffee. And tomorrow marks President Trump's first 100 days in office. KPBS Midday Edition will have a special report about what Trump's second term has meant for California. And be sure to add KPBS to your playlist. We've got daily content from our newsroom with San Diego News Now and Midday Edition. We also launched a new art podcast called The Finest. Just search for KPBS on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. You can find tonight's stories on our website, KPBS.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jade Hindman. Have a great evening, everyone.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. By the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.